Welcome to another episode of Mystery Garage. Today is a great day. I finally acquired the rest of the remaining parts for Project Stepchild here, and I couldn't be any more excited, so let's get into it. So for those that are new to the channel, Mystery Garage, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. About 8 months ago now, give or take, we started on a venture to build my dream car. My Mk1 dream car that I've always wanted since I was from the tender age of 16, 17. So we started out in doing that, and along the way, if you're new to the channel, we'll start to fill you in today by all the plans I have in store for this car. So this in front of us is a 1980 Rabbit. I bought it sitting on a container. I've said that many times before. Locally, that I bought it just for the parts. When I brought the car home, I was way too excited about it to ever part the car to finish my VR6 build. So I decided I would embark on an adventure to finally build out my personal dream car the way I've always wanted it since I was at a tender age. One of my easiest early targets was up on my wall here. I have a picture of one of my favorite Mk1s. Very simple, red, classic. A lot of this car kind of screams what made me fall in love with Volkswagens. So I thought what I would do is build something very similar. So I set out on a journey, let's say, to collect a lot of what you see in this picture. I have already the bumpers. I have similar wheels. They're not exactly the same. I have a grille, similar headlights, flag mirrors, that kind of thing. A lot of very similar items to this particular car. I am doing some things differently as well, but this was my target. Now, where we've come in the last few episodes is getting this car really close to being ready to start building it up. A lot of the earlier episodes was bringing this car down, cleaning it up, getting rid of the rust, that sort of thing. We're at a stage now where all of that is more or less complete, and we can start working on adding things to the chassis. With exception of bodywork, most of the chassis work is all finished. Now back here, as you guys have been watching, I have my ABF build that I've started. It's gotten a little bit of dusty from all the projects we've had in the shop, but nevertheless, that motor is ready to be cleaned up again, wiped off, and the head to be thrown back on. The head is actually done in the shop, so I just need to swing by and go pick it up. Over here, I have a pile of some of the remaining parts. I need to put this engine together. A lot of this stuff needs to be cleaned up, but a lot of the stuff is really good, usable, period correct stuff. Header, European oil cooler, all that kind of stuff that I want to throw on this ABF build. And like I've said many, many times, one of the original programs for this particular engine build was to put it on carbs. And I've probably said that more than 1,000 times in this channel, but it's very important to what I've always wanted out of my car. Additionally to that, you can see in these boxes, I have all kinds of parts ready to throw at this car, as well as a brand new fuel tank we need to install. I have my RS wheels already built and ready. So we got a lot of good things coming on this car, but I am missing a few items. So a lot of the final parts I'm missing is located in this engine bay. Things like transmission, wiring harness, some of the details around the transmission, actuation and all that kind of thing are still things that are kind of, or were, up in the air until I finally solidified getting the last of the parts I wanted. And I thought in today's episode, going over plans for the engine bay, plans for suspension, braking, all that stuff would be a perfect opportunity to bring up in today's episode by doing kind of almost like a build recap and laying everything out and letting you guys know exactly what the plans are, because in the next few episodes we're really going to start knocking that stuff out. We're going to start putting those things together, getting them ready. Like I said, the head is ready for the engine, so we're going to throw that on. We're going to need a clutch and a transmission. We're going to need brakes. We're going to need axles or the rear beam done. We're going to need suspension in the car. We're going to start having to plan everything out. We're going to need to lay the wiring harness back in the car. All that sort of stuff really brings everything together. And in order for me to do that well and to have you guys fully understand, I need to do that with you guys. I need to do a build recap, show you what my plans are, lay everything out so you guys, if you're building something similar at home, can kind of follow my theory and how I walk through a car in my mind before I actually lay it out and build it. There's a lot of little things you need to think about when you're starting to put parts together. Building a car, picking a transmission, picking the engine, picking out your wiring, picking out your braking, all that sort of stuff need to roll together to the end of the day, end up with a complete final project that really jives, works well, and responds well on the road. So what are my final goals for this project? Well, they're really realistic. I don't want this car to be a rotisserie show car. I don't want it to be, you know, an absolute, you know, car built for power. I want it to be everything kind of in the middle. I want it to be a great looking car, a great handling car, a great performing car, a car that's really, really well balanced. And by doing that, a lot of what I've done so far is realistic. I didn't acid dip the car, I didn't sandblast it or anything like that. I didn't go all out because it's not a rotisserie restoration show car. It really just is a car that I've always dreamed to have because I plan on using it. It's not going to be garage kept its entire life. It's not going to be trailered around. I'm actually going to get out on the road and use it a lot. I'm going to take the wife or the kids out for a rip. I'm going to take it to shows locally. I'm going to take it to some long drives. There's a lot of driving events in the Volkswagen world around where I live. So we're going to do some of that. Whistler cruises, Leavenworth drives, all that kind of stuff. That's what this car is going to be built for. So building it to an unrealistic show level where it's just so top notch that I'm scared to drive it wasn't the plan for this build. So you can see a lot of what I've done is ensuring that this car will last the test of time while being used. It's not going to be trailered around, like I said. So that's kind of what I've had in mind. So let's look at what I bought, because what I just recently bought really is what's got me excited to put the final touches on my entire plan for this car. So let's take a quick look. So what were the final parts I bought for this car? Let's have a look. So why did I buy this absolute nugget? As you can see, it's pouring rain. Let me pull it in a little closer. Let me show you why. So I'm really practicing two things that I preach here that I have since the very beginning of this channel. Those two things are, Volkswagen is amazing in working like Lego. You can take stuff from a Mark IV and easily put it in a Mark 1 at very, very little effort. It all kind of works together like Lego. The other thing is, you can often buy a whole car for the sum of a couple parts in order to make your project work. So for the cost of the parts that I needed to complete this car, I could buy this whole car and have the whole car as extra parts to sell off and pay it back. So let's talk about all the reasons why I bought this particular one. So believe it or not, I've been looking for this exact same car for a very long time in my area. And it's not very often these cars come up. Why I say that is generally a car of this era usually comes with a 1.8 liter turbo or comes with a VR6, and the ones that usually come with the 2.0 like this car does usually comes automatic. What I was looking for was an OBD2 2.0. I preferred it to be in a Mark IV if I could find it. I needed it to be 5-speed. It didn't have to be running because I don't need the engine, but it did have to come with all the things that come along with a Mark IV. Rear disc brakes, or the aluminum version, sorry. I needed to have the 5-speed O2J transmission, needed to have the Mark IV shift box, which I'm going to use, needed to have the OBD2 wiring harness, which I'm going to use in my engine, and I'll explain how we're going to do that. It needed to have all these things. I can also benefit from extra accessories on this particular motor, bracketry, that sort of stuff that I can throw onto my ABF build if I need. A lot of little components can all be working together to finish off that car. Now, when you start thinking about like O2J transmissions, O2J shifter boxes, adding those things up, you know, $300, $400 for a transmission that's in fairly good shape. You know, shifter box might be $100. You want aluminum Mark IV rear calipers. Again, maybe $100, maybe $50 if you got a really good deal at an auto wrecker. All those things together ended up buying this entire car for the cost that I would buy that stuff. I paid $800 for this car running and driving. I could insure it tomorrow, but it does have really high kilometers. Its dash is a Christmas tree. It's got all kinds of lights on. It does have heated seats though. I didn't think it did, but it does. It's got a lot of cool features that I could sell off, repay all of the costs of this car, and use lots of little bits and help out the local community at the same time. This car is pretty rough from the exterior. Not a lot of its body panels can be used, but I can definitely tell you I will be salvaging every usable part from this car to help fund my build. This kind of stuff isn't cheap. This is exactly what I've been preaching since the beginning of this channel, is buying a whole car often pays itself off. Sometimes you can even walk away with a profit, but in this case I needed to do it for the exact parts that I needed from this car in all one bang. Again, that's wiring harness, ECU, shifter box, O2J trans, rear disc brakes, and a bunch of other little bits throughout the car that I can really benefit from using. So for me, this was a very smart purchase and something I highly recommend you guys can do if you have the space for a car, even for a week. This car won't last long at my house. I'll probably strip it down in a single episode. We'll do it together, and I'll take everything I need from it. I'll post some local community stuff for anybody who has Mark IVs. Sometimes if they're doing their own swaps of any kind, they might be able to use it. This engine does run. I can sell the engine itself. A lot of these components can be reused by the local community, and it really helps everybody out finish their project. So again, won't stay here long. It's not going to be a project car of any kind. It's not going to be anything that's going to consume much content on the channel, but it's everything to do with providing me with the parts I need to finish up Stepchild. So let's take a look at this car real quick. Like I said, 2.0 transmission, 5-speed O2J transmission in there. It comes with the wiring harness that I need to salvage. It's got all kinds of the serpentine bracketry systems you're going to need to be able to convert to this style of serpentine alternator. Now, I'm not 100% I'm going to keep this exact same layout because it may not work with the carburetors, but we'll give it a shot. We'll see what I can and cannot use. I may have to change the orientation of the alternator a bit, but I do plan on using this style of alternator, and if I can, this style of mounting. Obviously, I won't be using any of the accessories such as the air conditioning and stuff from this car. I will be using the transmission without a doubt, wiring harness without a doubt, the O2J shift box in the car without a doubt. Unfortunately, the shifter boot's pretty ragged, but you know, that's pretty standard for these cars, believe it or not. The weird thing is that in my opinion, these Mark IVs don't seem to last as long, aesthetically, as the earlier cars did. Mark IIs, Mark IIIs even. The dash doesn't wear out as bad. The little clips and bits, like literally everything in this car is broken. The armrest is common to be broken. Ashtray pieces are broken. I've seen Mark Is twice the age of this car. This is a 2003, by the way, that has lasted the test of time with more kilometers, more miles on it, rougher exterior shape, but the interior is in way better condition than this. I just don't think they build this era of car to the same caliber they used to. I'm not throwing hate at these cars at all. I love Mark IVs. I think they look pretty cool. My heart obviously belongs to a Mark I, but I've just picked up on that, like knobs on the radios and stuff falling off, all kinds of weird things happening. A lot of the, I don't know what you call it, but the paint or the covering they put on their plastic peels, especially on the door handles and switches and that sort of stuff. The coating on top of the switches wears off, so you can't really tell what the switch does. A lot of that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm very happy with finding this car, but like I said, I've been looking for it for a long time. Finally acquired it, so now this project is more or less set to be finished pretty quickly. So let's talk about what the build list is and what I'm planning to do with this car, and I'll lay it all out so we can rehash the entire build. So I thought what we could do today is establish kind of a build breakdown. Now, I apologize about my writing. I realize not all of it's going to be legible on camera, but I'm going to talk through each of the points. You guys all know from the engine episodes what my plan is to do with the engine. You know, we built an ABF clone, which essentially for North America is a ABA bottom end, 16 valve head. I put some ABF pistons inside of it. We're going to be doing a couple other components that kind of cross over between ABA and 16 valve. And again, if you want to see that in detail, continue to watch the engine episodes, go back a little bit, look at the buildup of where we are so far, and then we're going to finish out building out the engine in fairly good detail throughout the episodes. We're going to add things like, you know, I don't have it included here, but we'll add things like cams, adjustable cam gear, those kinds of things. We'll talk about the ignition system and all that sort of stuff when those episodes come. I didn't spend a great deal of time listing it all down, but that's more or less the plan. You all know, because I've said it 1,000 times, I want to do that motor on carburetors. They're going to be Weber 45s for 16 valve. Obviously, if they're going on a 16 valve head, I will be buying those brand new. So that's one of the most expensive parts of my engine build is sourcing out those carburetors. I already know where I'm going to get them, but we'll leave them until the time comes to actually finally pick them up and have them shipped. Ignition system comes from that Mark IV I just bought. Dave at TDC is going to take care of the wiring for me, or at least the breakdown of that harness, breaking it down to the simplest form. In talking to him back and forth, he suggests that I run the crank trigger. So I'm going to be pulling out that block-off plate I have and probably putting the crank trigger back for a pickup for its ignition. We talked about a few different options there. We're going to try and throw the best system at it to make sure it lasts and runs really well. So we'll talk about more of that when the time comes. Again, I need to harvest that wiring system out of that Mark IV and then send it off to him where he's going to cut it down for me. And we'll discuss pros and cons of things I've chosen when that time comes. But awesome guy. I definitely give him contact. Transmission, again, out of that Mark IV, we're going to be using the O2J. I really just like the O2J option. I have an O2A in my VR6 car. I really like the cable shift, hydraulic clutch actuation. It's something I wanted to do in this car. And rather than in this car running an O2A box, I want to run an O2J box. So, minor differences there. Arguably, if you read into the comments and Volkswagen guys and swap guys, the tower is better in an O2J. Shifter box is better in O2J. In my VR6, I actually have an O2J shift box, but I have an O2A trans with an O2J tower, shift tower in it. Again, we'll talk about all this stuff in detail, but I just want to give you the general scope of where this car is and where we're going with it so everybody fully understands. So again, shifter box out of the O2J trans from that Mark IV. We're going to be using the clutch actuation is going to be from Fast Bunny Metalworks. I showed that in a previous episode where I unboxed it. That is a Mark I hydraulic clutch kit from Willwood that Fast Bunny Metalworks fabricates all the mounting. Awesome kit. I have that in my VR6 car as well. Really, really highly recommend that kit. I'm really happy with it, and we'll show you how to mount it when the episode comes to getting all that in the car. But that's what we're going to use for clutch actuation. So O2J's transmissions, when you're looking at swapping them, hydraulic clutch actuation and cable shift, both different from a Mark I. Mark I uses linkage shift and cable shift or cable clutch actuation, both of which we're going to get rid of. Two things it does: it cleans up the engine bay, as well as, in my opinion, it just functions better. I just like it a lot better. Not only is it cleaner, it just works better. So obviously we're going to go with that route. Now with an O2J transmission, I should also say for a Mark I, you do need the O2J mount kit to be able to mount it to the standard Mark I locations. You can fabricate them yourselves. I'll probably just buy the kit offered from a couple people. You can get it from S&P Auto. You can get it from Eurowise. There's a couple other companies that offer that as well. And I haven't quite locked down which one I'm going to choose, but again, I'll explain that when that episode comes. Front brakes, I'm undetermined in the front, but what I am going to do is I'm probably going to run something obviously that fits within a 15-inch wheel, because I know what wheel I'm running, which we'll get to down the way. You want to find is not necessarily with braking is always as big is better. You kind of want to find something that works really well. Momentum, a company that I've talked to a few times. I've always wanted to run one of their braking kits, a 4-pot front brake setup on a 4x100 disc. So I don't know whether I'm going to go the 10-inch, 11-inch. We'll figure that out. But again, whatever fits within that 15-inch wheel. You do want to decide your wheel before you decide your brakes, or vice versa, to make sure that you know that your packages are going to work together without interfering. Rear brakes, already figured that out. Obviously, I'm going to be using the Mk1 aluminum rear calipers on 16 valve Scirocco rear discs. So that whole setup, I'll be using 16 valve Scirocco e-brake cables. All those parts work together really well. I just need the adapter hose that goes from a Mk1 aluminum to a regular Mk1 brake cable. But again, that's pretty easy to get. Suspension, Fast Bunny Metalworks strut caps in front, the raised caps, so it'll actually allow me to run a better suspension without compressing it so much to try and get it low. Loosening it up so much that the shock compresses too much that you're sacrificing your suspension travel for sake of being low. So we're going to run the top strut caps, the raised strut caps. In the back, we're going to be running the drop plates. Again, same principle. We're going to be using SoloWorks coilover suspension. This is the first time I've purchased SoloWorks, so when I get the car running and driving, I'll give an honest review of what I think. All of this stuff I've purchased. It's not a sponsorship of any kind. I'm mentioning the parts that I recommend. But overall, this is kind of where we are with the suspension. Wheels, obviously my BBS RSs that are built by Rare Spec Wheels for me in kind of the prima donna look. Only difference is I think on these ones I'm going to go with chrome rather than gold bolts. But I really like the white and red combination with polished. It looks really good. Tire sizing, not fully decided yet, although there's not a ton of options in that kind of wheel width. Especially in the US and in Europe, they got a whole bunch of cool tire sizing that fits with narrower wheels. But we'll figure that out when the time comes. Again, nothing crazy. I'll probably run some kind of competition street tire, just so it gets a little bit of better grip. So when we're out there handling, from the Scirocco that I scrapped quite a few episodes back, I'm going to be using all of the new speed bars on this car. So lower sway front and back, lower stress front and back, lower and upper. We're going to be running the whole new speed program from that Scirocco, so there's going to be a ton of stiffening bars and suspension upgrades and all that sort of stuff that goes along with this package. Exterior, talked about that in the unboxing as well. Crosshaired headlamps, Volkswagen factory chrome grille. I'll be using small bumper, polished front and rear Euro bumpers. For the exhaust, 16 valve 421 header that I have, as well as the brand new Tectonic tuning exhaust for a Mk1, plus an 9 input, etc, etc, etc. There's a lot of stuff going in this car. I'm really excited. Everything I've basically acquired, except for some minor parts, like we're going to need obviously new brake rotors, that kind of thing. We're going to need a couple bits, odds and ends, but all that stuff is going to be purchased new. As far as the used parts category list, I have everything I need now that I've secured that Mk4. I'm extremely excited. We've got everything on hand, and pretty soon we're going to start throwing it all together. I couldn't be any more excited. So that about does it for today in the build breakdown on Stepchild. For everybody who's joined the channel recently, thank you very much for watching. Hope that gives you a good idea where this car is headed, because we're on the brink of turning on a new chapter of throwing a bunch of parts to it and building this car, as opposed to rebuilding the chassis and getting it ready. Couldn't be any more excited from where we are. So happy to have that Mk4 here, because it does provide all the parts we need to get everything together. So lots more coming soon. Thank you guys very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, again, I highly recommend it. And feel free to leave any questions, comments you may have on this particular car. If you have any questions about what I'm choosing or why I'm choosing something, by all means, drop a comment. We can get into discussing exactly the choices that I've made this far on this car. So until next week, guys, thanks very much. Take care.